nerds, what's up? Today I'm going to be ranking all of Neil Gaiman's books. I have slowly been working on them over the last few years, and I just thought it would be fun to come on here and rate them all, from his adult books to his middle grade books to even his children's books. I tried to read them all. Now, a couple disclaimers before we get in there. Neil Gaiman's written a lot, and it's sometimes kind of confusing because he has lots of, for example, collections of his short stories that overlap a lot. And so if you go to a site, you might be like, well, you didn't read this, but I looked at the contents and saw that I had read all those short stories in various other books. Additionally, he's written a lot of comics, just a lot of one-off for like DC and stuff like that. I'm not really a comic gal, so I really stuck with reading Sandman, which I feel like is his most famous of his comics, and didn't track down all the individual comics. This is mostly just focused on Neil Gaiman's written work. Okay, I've also split it into two categories. I basically did anything that's in a chapter book in one section, so that's going to include middle grade and adult fiction, and then I put his picture books in a separate category. I feel like because so much of Gaiman's work for middle grade and younger children is just amazing to read as an adult, it was easy for me to rank them all together, while his picture books obviously fall in a different category because they're actually for a very different audience. So we're going through two different tier lists today, and yeah, I'll see you after the jump. Okay, let's get into it. So some of this is going to be a little story time of where I started with Neil Gaiman, which is, let's start with Neverwhere, because this was the first Neil Gaiman I actually ever read. My sister gave it to me because Gaiman is one of her favorite authors, and I read this quite a bit ago. I would say 7 or 8 years ago, I think. And I read it, and it was meh. It was like, I gave it 3 stars. It was totally middling. This was like long before, obviously, I had any sort of booktube or blog or anything like that. I liked a lot of the ideas in it. It just really didn't do anything for me. I just didn't really love it. And in fact, because of that, did not read another Neil Gaiman for years afterwards. This is funny. I think Neverwhere is where a lot of people say to start with Gaiman. And I definitely feel like, yes, some people love Neverwhere. Like, this is going to be some of people's favorite Gaiman. They're going to not believe I put it there. And then other people feel the same way as me. It's kind of hard. Well, we'll talk about why it's so hard to start with Gaiman, maybe at the end. Anyway, so I didn't read anything for years. And then, because it had so much hype, I read Ocean at the End of the Lane, and I loved it. It was excellent. And it really changed my whole opinion on Gaiman. So after I read that, I was kind of interested, and I thought, you know what I should read? I should read American Gods, because that's the one that won the award and everyone talks about it. And I read American Gods, and unfortunately it was mind-blowing, life-changing. Absolutely freaking loved American Gods. Everything I think about works that explore gods and stuff like that, just amazingly written, amazingly paced, just all the ideas, loved it. It was actually after reading American Gods that I was like, oh, I'm going to read everything Gaiman has ever written. And I feel like that's wild to say after only 3 books, but I think for me what happened is like all 3 books were so different. You had Neverwhere, which I didn't really vibe with, Ocean at the End of the Lane, which is like this thriller horror, and American Gods, which was so different. And all of a sudden I realized one Gaiman is not like the other. They can be very, very different. And that is when I decided I was going to go on this journey. So I think I read Ocean at the End of the Lane maybe in 2020, and then American Gods in 2021. And then since then, I finished the rest of his stuff. So that was my journey. There you go. I'm not going to take this long on all of them. I apologize. Oh, you know what? Before I actually read Ocean at the End of the Lane, I actually did read Good Omens. Unfortunately, I know I said I wasn't going to put a lot up there, but Good Omens is one of my favorite books of actually all time. I did that video of 10 best fantasy standalones. Good Omens is on it. But I read Good Omens more for Terry Pratchett, because I had just gone into Discworld and loved it so much. And then the show came out and I was like, oh, I should try reading it. And then I read it and was just blown away, loved it so much. I thought maybe at the time it was more of Terry's influence. Now that I've read so much Gaiman, I see distinctly what influenced both of them. Gosh, Good Omens is like peak Pratchett and Gaiman though, I feel like together. Also, the show was very good. I really enjoyed the adaptation. I think I read Trigger Warning next, which is a collection of short stories. And I liked Trigger Warning. I liked it. It was good. I didn't feel, it was 4 stars for me. I didn't feel overwhelmed by it. There's definitely with Gaiman short stories, and maybe I'll just do all the collections at once, they definitely like some hit, some don't. I don't think I've ever read a Neil Gaiman collection of short stories of the 3 or 4 I read that really were like, every story in this was amazing. Trigger Warning is kind of fun because it has a lot of nerd culture stuff in it, things he wrote for Doctor Who and Sherlock and stuff like that, which is kind of fun. But yeah, Trigger Warning was good. And actually, I think I'd put all 3 of his collections. So he has 2 other short story collections, Fragile Things and Smoke and Mirrors. I'll put them in order in the good list because I think they were all good. Fragile Things was my least favorite, I think, of all of them, despite the fact that it has, in my opinion, his best story in Fragile Things, which is a study in Emerald, which is a riff, obviously, on Sherlock Holmes, a study in Scarlet. I almost said a study in pink. That's the Sherlock BBC name. A Study in Emerald, amazing short story. If you just pick one short story to read, do A Study in Emerald. I loved it so much. There was a couple other stories I really enjoyed in there, like 15 Painted Cards and Sunbird. And also there is an American Gods short story in there that I obviously really liked since I love American Gods. But overall, I think Fragile Things were just kind of middling for me. I think I liked Trigger Warning a little bit better. And then my very favorite would be Smoke and Mirrors of the 3. The reason it doesn't move up to excellent for me is because this was a book of high highs and low lows. Like Smoke and Mirrors had some incredible short stories and also had, I think, some of my very least favorite things that Neil Gaiman has ever written. So because they're short stories, it's not that big of a deal, but it was high highs and low lows. But I think I'm honoring the high highs by giving it a slightly higher rating. I think I gave that one 4.5 stars and the other 2 4 stars. So good. Lots of good in there, but some of the lower parts brought them down. I'm looking at my list of favorite stories, and it is reflected. There was a lot of favorite stories in this one. Chivalry, The Price, The Goldfish Pool, Changes, and Only the End of the World Again were some of my favorites. And again, this is why I rate it slightly higher. I can't put it into excellent because some of the stories I hated so much in it, but those stories were so good. They made me think, they made me pause, they made me engage a lot, which is what I love. And particularly Changes, I feel, was very ahead of its time, and I always love reading a story that's ahead of its time. So mixed bag with Neil Gaiman's short stories. In many ways, you might just want to seek out individual short stories, especially because a lot of them are illustrated. Okay, next, let's talk about Stardust. Stardust, for me, great concept, bad execution. Love this idea of a fallen star and going and get it. I just didn't really understand the audience for this one. Part of it felt so kid-friendly, but then there's kind of like some weird sex in it. Not weird sex, that's the wrong way to say. It's graphic in a way that doesn't seem to fit the story for me personally. It wasn't weird, it was just kind of like, I didn't think it fit the fairy tale vibe. So this was a good concept, bad execution for me. Kind of one of my least favorite Gaiman's overall, even though I love the concept. What's interesting is I do know Gaiman says he thinks the Stardust adaptation is better than what he wrote. He's like on record saying they made a better movie than he made book. I haven't seen it. I know it's a very famous story. So I'm excited to watch that movie and see if I agree with him. Let's see, next let's do Norse Mythology. I actually think I read that before Stardust. Love Norse Mythology. That's definitely up there and excellent. Norse Mythology was actually the first book I ever listened to Gaiman read because I am not an audiobook person. But Leanna from Leanna's Library highly recommended that I listened to Norse Mythology, and it started a love affair for Neil's voice. He could read to me all day. I did read most of these physical just because it's my favorite way to read books, but I do allow Neil to read to me now because he's one of 2 audiobook narrators that I actually like. He has a great voice. So I would also recommend doing Norse Mythology audiobook because he has such a funny Thor voice and it works great. Love it. In fact, everything that Neil does based in the gods, I love, meaning that Anansi Boys is also excellent. I feel like Anansi Boys is so underrated. A lot of people don't like it who love American Gods, and I can't understand why, because it's just complete. I mean, it is like sort of a sequel. It's not directed, but it's in the same world. I loved it. I loved the vibe. I loved the continuation of the American Gods themes. Anansi Boys. If you liked American Gods, you should definitely read Anansi Boys. Loved it. Okay, let's go to Sandman, which was the only ones of his comics that I read. And actually, before I talk about it, I pulled it out just so I could show you guys the version I read, which is the deluxe book 1, which has issues 1 through 16. So I originally thought I read more, but I only read 16 issues of Sandman. And the reason I stopped with 16 issues of The Sandman. Because I didn't really feel that strongly about it. I feel like I've tried a few different times to get into kind of comics, and I don't know if it's just the storytelling style or what. I have a hard time getting into it. Actually, you know what? I'm moving Sandman. Well, for me, it was a great concept. Didn't love the execution. But I don't like that it says bad execution, because I don't think it's a bad execution. It's more like execution not for me. So it kind of rides that fine line. The idea of Sandman, loved. The story, idea, loved. It was just like the actual issues I didn't really feel that strongly about reading. Like I was reading it and was like, this is fine. The only issue that I really, really loved was the serial killer convention. Loved that issue. That issue was like excellent to me. I was super into it. Everything else was only fine. So I hate to tell you guys, I probably won't be reading more Sandman. I know that is going to be definitely one of my more unpopular opinions. That's what we're here for, right? Okay, next up, let's do The View from the Cheap Seats, which is actually the only nonfiction of his that's in here. It's a collection of all of his nonfiction essays, and it has like all of his introductions and stuff like that. This is the last book to go into mind-blowing, life-changing. I actually brought it out to show you guys because I am not a bookmarker. That's just kind of not how I engage or read. I have some tabs just in case I need to keep notes ever for BookTube, but in general, don't tab things. This is literally, these tabs are me just things I wanted to re-reference for my life again. This book said so many things that I had thought before about the fantasy genre and reading and critical thinking, but in a Neil way, in the most funny, insightful, poignant way that I've never been able to say. Like I read the first story in this and I just kept being like, yes, 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 you're so right. It also contains a story that I've talked about before. Let me read the title so you guys could go look it up. That I think was the most life-changing one in here, which is What the Very Bad Swear Word is a Children's Book Anyway, the Zena Sutherland lecture. I've talked about this a lot before, so I'll keep it brief, but that just totally changed my view about the kind of books I give my kids and not being overly concerned about it. And it was amazing. I recommend this so much. Collection of nonfiction. My life, like actually life-changing. Like it changed how I viewed things and how I act. So, highly recommend, obviously. I read the Graveyard Book out loud to my son. Excellent, excellent. Totally understand why it won an award. I actually got a little teary-eyed at the end, which is not very common for me. If you didn't know, and I didn't know actually, the Graveyard Book is a riff on the Jungle Book. The Graveyard Book, the Jungle Book, get it? Leanna from Leanna's Library has a great video on that. I'll link it. We also read Coraline together. I feel like I should take the fine out. Coraline is also good. I feel like I need to edit this. Can I edit this right now? I'm gonna edit this. We're just gonna make this good. Fine makes it sound worse than it is. These are good books. These are good, solid books. Yeah, I'm editing out. We're retconning the fine. I really enjoyed Coraline quite a bit. My son really liked Coraline. I think he would have rated it higher because he likes spooky books like Goosebumps, and Coraline is actually pretty scary. I enjoyed it. Didn't enjoy it as much as the Graveyard Book, but still really good, solid. Obviously one of his most famous books. Fortunately, The Milk. This is definitely one of the younger books, the youngest book on this list for sure. I read this out loud to my 4-year-old and 8-year-old at the time, and she loved it, he loved it. Fortunately, The Milk is almost mind-blowing category. Like, I'm gonna put it right at the top of excellent here. Loved Fortunately the Milk. It's a kid's book, which is why I feel like I can't put it maybe quite on the level of like Good Omens and American Gods. This was so delightful, and I love the story behind it. If you read View from the Cheap Seats, you'll find out like why he read that. It's so charming. If you're gonna read like one of Neil Gaiman's kids' books, read Fortunately the Milk. I think you will enjoy it as an adult, even if you don't have children. That's just my own personal opinion. So I actually got M is for Magic, which is a short story collection for kids, not realizing that most of the stories in here I'd actually already read. There was only, I think, 3 that I hadn't read before. Oh, where am I gonna put this one? Okay, so this one's complicated. Let's put this back here for a second. M for Magic is between excellent and good. Here's why. We'll put it at good for now. So first of all, one of the stories I hadn't read before, the very first one, the title is eluding me. I'll put it on the screen. One of the best Neil Gaiman stories. It actually made me laugh out loud at one point. It's like a fairy tale noir story. I was not expecting it to be so funny, and it was incredible. My issue with M is for Magic, it is listed on the back as 10 and up. It is for middle grade. I personally think some stories in there are a little adult for a 10-year-old. Now, it's gonna depend on your 10-year-old. I'm thinking of myself at 10. I'm thinking of my son, who is 9. He would not be able to read some stories in this novel, in my opinion. It talks about relationships and sex, not graphic in any way, but in a way that I think a lot of 10-year-olds would not be ready for personally. So if you're gonna give this to your kids, I would just read it first through to see how you feel about it. Because I feel like half the stories my son would love and half the stories would just be too old. Like maybe more for a 13 or 14-year-old. Not like crazy adult, but just a little older. That being said, the stories they picked for the collection were some of my favorites in the adult collections, like Sunbird's in there, which is one of the ones I listed as my favorite. So I think as a whole, the collection is very, very strong. Just think it's for a little older than 10, some of them, in my opinion. Okay, we got 3 left. Ironically, these are some of the last 3 I read over like last weekend, because I was like, oh, I'm done with all Neil Gaiman's books. Then I went on his website and I was like, how did I miss these 3? Hilariously, Odd and the Frost Giant, excellent. Love the illustrated version. I read this on my Libby app because I got them last minute, and I was like, oh, look at me. I'm getting things from the library, so I'll save money instead of just like buying all the physical versions. Unfortunately, loved Odd and the Frost Giant so much, I immediately went and ordered it because I want my son to read it. Very Norse mythology, right? It's the Norse mythology for children, so excellent. Also love Sleeper and the Spindle. I did love Odd and the Frost Giants a little more, but the Sleeper and the Spindle was very cool story. Very excited for the art in that one as well. And this is, twisted fairy tale, just like Odd and the Frost Giants is twisted Norse mythology. I think it'd be easy to skip these as an adult. I recommend you don't. Really enjoyed them. Finally, Mirrormask. Mirrormask is just gonna go in the good category. Here's the thing about Mirrormask. I actually listened to this one because it was the only way I could get it on Libby. I believe Mirrormask was a movie first. Correct me if I'm wrong. I was doing some research about this, and this is the story Neil wrote for the movie. I think if I had read Mirrormask first, I would have disliked it. But because I'm steeped in the Gaiman of it all, and I kind of know his style, I didn't mind that it was so one thing to the next with no real through line, just kind of random stuff happening. I found it very charming. I ended up enjoying it a lot. I am not surprised the Rotten Tomatoes reviews for a movie made from this book are not good. It is kind of very random. I can see why people would hate it though. I think I was just along for the ride at that point. That is my ranking of all the Gaiman books. I like that it's kind of a parabola. I know there are going to be takes in here that some people hate, but overall you can see I pretty much enjoyed all the Gaimans. I have 10 in excellent or above. So for me, well worth reading all of his stuff, and I will continue to read anything new he puts out. We're going to move on to the children's book list, but you guys have got to drop your rankings, or drop me a ranking that you super disagree with. Like, I'd love to see something I put in mind blowing that you were like, absolutely not. Or something I put in the meh category or the good category that you were like, you're crazy. That's mind blowing. Let me know in the comments below. Also, the tier maker list for Neil Gaiman, non-existent. So I actually did make this one public if you want to go do your own. I'm sure no one will, but it's there. Okay, next we're going on to Neil Gaiman's picture books. And actually I'm gonna do this 2 ways because first of all, I got these all from the library pretty much because I'm kind of in a place in my life where I don't need to buy new picture books because I have a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, and we're kind of moving on to other books, and I couldn't justify buying this many picture books. So they're all library books for the most part. And I also did this with my daughter. I had her read them all with me and rank them separately herself because I thought, for reading picture books, we probably need a kid's opinion as well. So our list will differ, which I think is kind of fun. I will do hers at the end. The first Neil Gaiman picture book I ever read is actually one I own because my sister gifted it to me before my son was born, and that's Instructions. I love Instructions. I think Instructions has my favorite art. Let's see if I can kind of show you guys. Just like, I think it is very cute art. I love it. It's kind of wacky. So what I am gonna say is This was an illustrated short story of his that's found in one of his collections. It wasn't necessarily written for children at first. I don't know how many children are gonna like it necessarily, but it's not, I don't think children would like this because my son was obsessed with this book. Actually so much, it has a rip in it. We read it so much, I had to tape it back together. My daughter wasn't super into it. So I think this will depend on your kids. It's kind of like a weird story. My son loved it, I love it. So I'm really glad I own this one. Okay, the next one that we read was Pirate Stew, which is fine. I should probably put in good. I think Pirate Stew is very good as a kid's book. I didn't enjoy reading it a ton. It's long. That's okay. Pirate Stew is good. Let's make Pirate Stew good. The art is really adorable. Here, I kept them all from the library so I could show you guys the art, since that's really important in a picture book. The art is really cute. The story is really cute. I just didn't feel blown away by it. It wasn't something I'd feel connected to. You know what though? Pirate Stew is the most kidsy book out of all of these. It's the most like straight up what you'd expect from a kid's book, so I imagine that's a lot of people's favorites. The next ones we read were Tuesday. So I'll just start with Tuesday. I loved Tuesday. That's definitely in the amazing category. I love the story behind this. You would read it and View from the Cheap Seats. When are you gonna read that? You should read it. I won't say it here, but it's very cute. I love Tuesday. I love the concept of this. This is the book that I think is the perfect intersection of what adults like and children like. It was super adorable. I like them all. Tuesday was my favorite, and Tuesday at the Beach. I like Tuesday First Day at School a little less, only because I feel like the main conceit wasn't as funny in those two as it is in the first. Very cute, very funny. I'm actually buying it to gift to a friend. They're great. I love those ones, and the art is very cute as well. Okay, next we read The Dangerous Alphabet, which was just mid for me. There's some cute little things in it. The art style wasn't necessarily my favorite. I just don't see why I would personally buy it as an alphabet book. Next up we have Crazy Hair, which I also found to be mid. Mostly I actually really liked the idea of Crazy Hair, but me and my daughter both really just didn't love this illustrator. Dave McKean wasn't my favorite illustrator for this. I felt like the illustrations didn't support the story as well as it could have, which made it, yeah, it's fine. Like I definitely wouldn't feel the need to read that ever again. And in fact, I was stacking the books and they all just fell down. I definitely wouldn't feel the need to read it again. In fact, to the point, maybe I'll put it down to meh. I really just didn't feel strongly about it at all. Okay, next is Blueberry Girl. And this is the one that I'm putting in I don't think children would like. And here's why. I love Blueberry Girl. It is so sweet. It is something Gaiman wrote about his daughter, I think when his wife was pregnant with his first kid. And it's so sweet. Maybe I should even read some of it. It's the kind of thing I'd want to hang in a nursery as art. Like, it's like, yeah, let her grow. Let her stay waking and wise. And it's like these hopes for his future child. So I loved it, personally reading it. It was so sweet. And I, again, hang it in a nursery. But it's not really a story that I think kids would like. Like reading a picture book to kids, I just feel like, oh, okay, so? I feel like you have to kind of be a parent to appreciate it. So that's why I'm putting it in I don't think the kids would like this category. I guess at this point I'm just throwing them all on the ground since they fell anyway. Cool. Okay, the next book is Cinnamon. I really liked Cinnamon. It wasn't quite in the amazing category for me, but I think it's a very good story. I like the art quite a bit, and it's very different. And yeah, I enjoyed that one a lot. Okay, then we have What You Need to Stay Warm, which I actually read digitally because, these last 3 books were on hold at the library for weeks and weeks and weeks, and we still haven't gotten them. So I read What We Need to Stay Warm just digitally as a picture book, and the other 2 we actually did as audiobooks, if that changes your mind. But What You Need to Stay Warm is his newest book, was written in 2023. Once again, I don't think children would like this. It was written as a fundraising effort for children around the world. Concept of it was like, what do you need to stay warm? And they talk about in the book people who don't have those things and how we can help them. I think it's a very sweet story, and I think it would be very good in specific circumstances, like at school, to lead conversation. As a children's book on its own, doesn't read very children's book to me. Just gonna be honest. It's not bad, just like Blueberry Girl, which I really liked, just doesn't read like a children's book to me, personally. Okay, and the last 2, Wolves in the Wall. I I loved Wolves in the Wall. That was my other favorite. A little weird in the best Gaiman-y way. Now this one I think is also illustrated by Dave McKean, who I didn't like his illustrations. So I do wonder if this one was helped by the fact that we listened to Gaiman read it to us. And I'll talk about that also when I do my daughter's rankings. But as far as listening to Gaiman read it to me, I loved it. Probably wouldn't like the art as much, but still liked it a lot. And then The Day I Swapped My Dad for Two Goldfishes was one of the one I was the most excited to read because I'd heard him talk about it in View from the Cheap Seats. And the concept sounded so interesting to me. But as it went, even though Gaiman was reading it to us, I was like, okay, that was fine. I didn't feel blown away. And considering it has also the artist that I didn't love, I'm pretty sure I can't quite read who the artist was. Oh yeah, it is Dave McKean. Yeah, that's just middling for me. Okay, now I'm gonna give you my daughter's ranking, which I actually wrote down. She obviously doesn't understand tier lists. She's 5. And when we did this, she was 4 as well. So she just kind of gave me her favorites in order, which I can put up here. So hers, I made a new one it's just numbered because that's how she did it. So her very favorite book was Pirate Stew. The minute we read Pirate Stew, nothing else could beat Pirate Stew. That was it. I had to read this book 800 times, which was fine. It wasn't, like I said, it was a good book, but it wasn't my favorite. Didn't matter. My 4-year-old was like, this is the book. Her second favorite was tied between Cinnamon and Wolves in the Wall. I think she just really liked The Girl and the Tiger and Cinnamon. Wolves in the Wall was funny because she's definitely kind of more of a sensitive kid and gets scared easily. And so when we were listening to Wolves in the Wall, at one point she was like head down, covering her ears, so scared. But then at the end she was like, Mom, that was amazing. We have to listen to it again. And she listened to it like 3 more times that day. And I love that because Gaiman has a little story about Coraline being a kid's book or not because it's so scary and how kids love being scared. So I thought it was kind of funny that she enjoyed being scared. But yeah, Wolves in the Wall, I think was her second favorite kind of, but yeah, she said those were tied. Then the next we have all the Chew books. So her favorite was Chew at the Beach, and then Chew's First Day of School, and then regular Tuesday. So that's kind of similar, I feel like, to how I felt about them. And then next was Blueberry Girl for her, and I Swapped My Dad for Two Goldfish. She liked I Swapped My Dad a little bit more than I did. And she enjoyed Blueberry Girl. She did kind of go, oh, that's fine. I like the pictures. Didn't have much to say. What's really is, soon we're getting into books she didn't like. All of these I'd say she enjoyed to loved. Starting 5 and up, those are the books she made me read over and over and over again. From here on out, did not ever have me reread these books. So that does tell you a little something about them. Next is Instructions, which she has read a lot, but has never been as into as her brother was into. She did not like Crazy Hair. She told me she thought it was weird. Also didn't like Keep Warm. Actually, she just said Keep Warm was boring, which I told you I didn't think it was a good book for kids. So yeah, Keep Warm was boring. The funniest one is she hated The Dangerous Alphabet. Like to the point where she said it shouldn't belong on the list. Actually, what did she say? Well, that's definitely my least favorite. It gave me the shivers. Which is funny because she liked Wolves in the Wall because she liked it, because it scared her. But yeah, Dangerous Alphabet, she was like, don't like the drawings, don't like what it was about. She wouldn't let me put the book in the same stack as the other books. Hated Dangerous Alphabet, which I thought was very funny. So anyway, if I put our 2 little lists side by side, I think we kind of mostly agreed. I do like doing this just because I feel like a kid's book should appeal to children. And I would say anything from 5 and up were really the hits in our family personally. Okay, this is an incredibly long video, but hey, Neil Gaiman has written a lot of stuff. I'd love to know if you have read his children's books and what you thought of them, if you agreed with my ranking or my daughter's ranking. Have you tried Neil Gaiman? Have you haven't? Actually, this was sounding like it was going into my outro, but we're gonna make it a little bit longer. Where should you start with Neil Gaiman? I get that question a lot. Like, you might be here, like, where should I start? It's kind of hard. I don't know if you've noticed as I've been talking, he writes such a wide variety of things that it's going to really depend on the person. I do have a couple suggestions though. I think The Ocean at the End of the Lane is a great place to start. It is short. It's widely, in my opinion, liked. I don't know very many people who dislike that book. It doesn't seem as, not contentious, doesn't seem as divisive as some of the other books people say to start with, and kind of gives a good sense of his kind of dreamy way of writing. So that's probably my suggestion of where to start. Neverwhere is often suggested. However, I find that it's kind of either your favorite Gaiman or one of your least favorites. Like, it's one of my least favorite Gaimans. And American Gods, which is my very favorite, I've also found has been some people's least favorite. So I do think Neverwhere and American Gods are very classic Gaiman, but in different ways. I think you just are gonna have to allow yourself to try more than one of them. If you read one and you bounce off of it, I just suggest trying another one of the recommendations. I, in a lot of cases, will say to start with short stories. With Gaiman, I personally don't suggest it. I would say start with one of his novels. Another good start could be the Graveyard Book as well. I know it is advertised to middle graders, but I think it has huge appeal to adults as well. So that would kind of be my fourth recommendation. Okay, now we can go into the outro. If you've read all of Gaiman's books, tell me below. I'm definitely a Gaiman fan. If you think that it's a crime against humanity that I stopped reading Sandman, try to convince me to keep reading it, or give me some of his other comics. I meant to say this earlier, he does have a lot of short stories that are illustrated, so I read some of them illustrated, some of them not. I think things like Chivalry would probably be great illustrated as well, which I think is really fun that Gaiman illustrates so much of his stuff. Okay, this is long enough. If you like these kind of videos, please like and subscribe. That is the best way to support me. If you want to see what I'm currently reading, as well as other nerdy rants, you can check me out on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. I'll see you next time. Bye. Do you have anything to say about the Neil Gaiman books?
Well, the only one that I like the best is Pirates Stew.
Yeah, I know you like Pirates Stew the very best.
Oh, brother, Mom. Oh, brother.
What other ones did you like?
A tiger and a person.
Cinnamon.
Yes, Cinnamon.
Why did you like Cinnamon so much?
I don't know.
The other one I think you liked a lot was the wolves.
It's in the walls.
What was that sentence you liked so much that they said in Wolves in the Walls?
When there was wolves in the walls, it's all over.
And then what did they say at the end? That was so funny to us.
When the humans are in the wall, it's all over.
It's also all over. That was funny. Okay. Should we do another author next?
Well, I don't know.
Okay, say bye.
Bye.